Invasive plants are plants that are intentionally or accidentally introduced into areas outside of their natural habitat. These species can spread rapidly with negative consequences for native species. Invasive plant species have an impact on the diversity of local species. They affect water availability and damage the quality of soil nutrients. Once an alien plant has invaded a habitat, it changes the conditions of that environment. It does so by changing the light, solar radiation, and temperature levels in the invaded patches. The nitrogen cycle requires a lot of energy and is performed by nitrogen-fixing bacteria living freely in the soil and symbiotic nitrogen-fixing bacteria living in certain plant roots. This cycle happens by the fixation, where bacteria change nitrogen into ammonium. Next is the nitrification, by which ammonium gets changed into nitrates that the plants can then absorb by bacteria. Next is the assimilation. This is how the plants get nitrogen. Next is the ammonification, which is part of the decaying process. And lastly, the denitrification, which is the extra nitrogen in the soil gets put back out into air. The image depicts the loss of flowering species and dominance of grasses with elevated nitrogen decomposition. Our understanding on the impacts to floral traits such as phenology, morphology, nectar, and pollen is lacking. If the plant does consume the nitrogen gas, an entirely different process follows. The plant first has to die and fall to the soil. When it does, decomposing bacteria and fungi like mushrooms will begin to consume the plant. This is what naturally happens to all life, including animals and humans as well when they die. The nitrogen will then go through the process of mineralization, which will convert it back to ammonium.
To discuss the relationship of sulfur and the flora, first off, we all know that sulfur occurs in all living matter as a component of certain amino acids. In this way, it is abundant in the soil in proteins and also through a series of microbial transformations, and it ends up as sulfates usable by plants. In addition to this, it is one of the components that make up the proteins and vitamins that consist of amino acids that contain sulfur atoms. In this way, sulfur is important for the functioning of proteins and enzymes in plants and in animals that depend upon plants for sulfur.
Sulfur is as necessary as phosphorus and is considered an essential mineral. What does sulfur do for plants? Sulfur in plants helps form important enzymes and assists in the formation of plant proteins.
The environmental changes created by humans create regional variations of environmental factors that can be left out of the area in which many terrestrial plants in a country have developed over the next 50 to 100 years. These environmental changes could lead to a larger global extinction of species than direct loss of habitat. The relative relevance of the responses to global environmental shifts between evolution and population ecology depends on the size of regional and local recruitment constraints and whether the sequence of human restrictions is novel at regional level or only at continental or global level. The anthropogenic global change and plant constraints is that human activities change certain environmental limitations that have contributed to the development of existing plant species, along with intraspecific and interspecific intercommercial measures influencing the structure, diversity, and work of population of land and aquatic plants.
Invasive plant seeds are often distributed by birds, winds, or unknowingly humans, allowing seed to move in great distances. An example of this are the Himalayan balsam in New Zealand, which is an easily recognizable and rather presents species of riverbanks and damp places. Its explosive seed heads can spread widely, particularly through water. Care needs to be taken to not spread the seeds further during control, particularly within contaminated soil. Another example is the English ivy in the United States, which is one of the worst spread invasive plants in the country due to its ability to handle widespread conditions. It is an aggressive spreading vine which can slowly kill trees by restricting lights. Lastly, the Japanese knotweed, which is often encountered on development sites as it can tolerate a wide range of disturbed conditions such as urban areas, schools, water courses, and waste ground. Its strong shoots can damage hard standing, and it can be difficult to eradicate. Invasive species have contributed to the decline of the 42% of U.S. endangered and threatened species, and for 18% of U.S. endangered or threatened species, invasives are the main cause of their decline. Some invasives have aggressive root systems that spread long distances from a single plant. These root systems often grow so densely that they smother the root systems of surrounding vegetation.
Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment influence genes that affect the way your genes work. To make it clear, the exhaust from cars and trucks and the thermal power plant are the significant source of outdoor air pollution. When we breathe, and high levels of particles present in the exhaust, these particles can irritate the lungs and cause the breathing disorders found in the bloodstream. Fine particles may lead to inflammation throughout the body. Breathing in these fine particles that have been associated with epigenetic changes may increase the risk of having disease. The effect of air pollution on our nature is the sea levels are rising, forests are dying, and wildlife is scrambling. That is the main effect of air pollution that can change the way of our genes work. To avoid the air pollution, we need to become responsible to our nature and to keep the fresh air that we use in our everyday life.